This Tales of Eternia retrospective was brought to you by my lovely patrons on Patreon. For as little as $3 Australian a month, you can get your name shouted out at the start of every Xenosanctum video, as well as access to bonus behind the scenes content. Hey guys, so as an Australian, I only ever got access to the 2006 PSP remake of Tales of Eternia, which is what I'll be using for this review. I would play the PS1 version, but yeah, I'm not paying that. And as for emulation, I don't really like playing emulated games. Just look at how long it took me to finish Tales of Destiny. Besides, the PSP version is practically the same game, with some quality of life improvements, and of course no multiplayer. So join me as I look back on 2000's Tales of Eternia for the PlayStation 1, or actually looking at the 2006 PSP version. Thanks to brand recognition and the enlarged market, Tales of Destiny would dwarf its predecessor when it came to sales, selling well over 1 million copies and becoming one of the most successful Tales games of all time. With the Tales series now a recognisable name, Namco and WolfTeam would begin to branch out from the main series into other projects. The first would be a remake of Tales of Fantasia on the PlayStation 1, using the newer features added in Tales of Destiny such as multiplayer and the anime art style, with the characters now using Kosuke Fujisuma's character designs. This version would go on to outsell its original Super Famicom version despite being a Japanese exclusive. The second project would be a sequel to Tales of Fantasia called Tales of Fantasia Narakiri Dungeon. This Game Boy Color game would become the first of the Tales escort titles and would go on to become the Tales of the World series of crossover games. However, these side projects were merely icing on the cake as WolfTeam developed their next mainline Tales game. By the end of the 1990s, WolfTeam had gotten pretty familiar with Sony's PlayStation, and now had the confidence to push a more graphically impressive game. This would see the series abandon the classic gridded JRPG look for more dynamic visuals to make the environments look more realistic. Eiji Kikuchi would yet again be back to direct his third Tales game, and Matsumi Inamata would again return to design the characters, but for the story, new writer Sarako Natori would be brought on. When it came to naming the game, the team looked to the eternal nature of the universe, and would go with the name Tales of Eternia, giving the game the characteristic genre of Eternity and Bonds RPG. This would begin a trend in the series with a lot of titles taking English words and ending them with "ia". Tales of Eternia would be unveiled at the 1999 Tokyo Game Show for a late 2000 release date. After the previous two Tales games had skipped out on getting a Western release, it would soon be announced that Tales of Eternia would be getting a release for NTSC territories, but again, no pow, we would have to wait. During the localization, Namco US decided to make the odd choice and rename the game to Tales of Destiny 2 in Roman numerals. Reasons for this change have ranged from Namco US wanting brand recognition with Tales of Destiny, the only other Tales game released at the time, to fears of a copyright infringement with He-Man's Masters of the Universe toy line, whose stories were also set in the world of Eternia. Regardless, with the game set for a 2001 release date in the States, the West would get to see its second Tales game. The story begins, and already we are seeing major graphical improvements, with Production IG now supplying us with a full opening cutscene. In this cutscene we see an old man find a young girl and her pet in a forest. Oh yeah, we got voice acting now.
Yaeo pue wakundo, I din, yaeo, dinidu ya.
Ooh, I too, pu I wakundu, I mudu, din I do ya.
And no, I have not said my language wrong, they are not speaking Japanese, but instead some made up language called Melanix. The old man helps see the girl into some kind of spacecraft, which blasts off into the sky. We then see the craft pass through some kind of portal before emerging above another landmass. Meanwhile, on the ground we meet our new protagonist, Reed Herschel, as he makes his way to the local lookout tower where he finds his friend, Farah Orsted, and we get to experience the wonders of the English voice acting.
Huh, is that?
Reed!
Farah?
Hey, long time no see. How's it going? Did your hunt go?
I just took what I need for today. Nothing hard about that.
Yeah, it's not very good. The two are having the most unnatural conversation when suddenly Farah notices a light, and the two are just able to jump out of the tower before the spacecraft crashes into it. The two then approach the crashed craft and find the girl and her pet from the opening. Unfortunately, they can't understand a word of what she is saying. However, they discern that she needs help. After some shenanigans, including the wreckage of the craft exploding, the three head back to the village. At the village, the town elder is distrustful of the mysterious girl and tells Farah that the girl can't stay in the village. Suddenly, a mysterious figure bursts through the wall and begins attacking the girl. Reed and Farah soon counter and drive the man away. However, the incident strengthens the resolve of the village elder to expel the girl. Farah then decides if the girl is to leave, she will leave too, to which the village elder is indifferent. Back at Farah's house, Farah is able to change the girl into some less conspicuous clothes. She then decides to head off to the town of Minch, where her childhood friend Keels the Bill is studying as a student, with hopes that he might be able to understand the girl. Reed initially plans to stay behind, but when the girl refuses to go without him, Reed reluctantly goes with the two towards Minch. Soon after leaving town, Reed and Farah are able to make basic communication with the girl and ascertain her name is Meredy, and her pet's name to be Quickie, which was kind of obvious as that's the only word it ever seems to say. What are you, a Pokemon? The three then encounter some more shenanigans involving a dojo, some rapids, and an annoying raft minigame, to eventually arrive at the town of Minch. Following directions of the town's scholars, the three then find Keel at the nearby mountain observatory, deep in his studies. Keel was initially shocked to see that Reed and Farah had come so far to see him, but is soon versed into what had happened. Keel soon learns that Meredy is speaking Melanix, the same language which mages use to cast spells, and is thus able to loosely translate what Meredy is saying. Meredy soon reveals that she is from Celestia, a land which sits in the sky looking down upon their world called Inferior. A bit on the nose there, guys. She also reveals that she has been sent to stop an event called the Grand Fall, in which Celestia and Inferior will collide with each other, destroying both worlds. Realising that the fate of the world is at stake, the now four-man party head off to find Keel's old professor, who lives in Morley Village, and might know how to stop the Grand Fall from happening. The story continues from there, and we'll see the four go on a journey across Inferior and Celestia, as they try to stop the Grand Fall. For the full story breakdown, it doesn't appear that anyone has covered the story yet, so you know the drill, cutscene compilations it is. And now, onto the presentation. Thanks to the 3-year development cycle, we now have a much more dynamic look to the worlds of Inferior and Celestia. The towns and dungeons now have an isometric 45-degree angle with the camera. This gives off a loose sense of 3D to the world. To navigate this more dynamic world, the player now can move in all 8 directions compared with the limited 4 directions of the last 2 games. Towns and dungeons are the only improvement. The overworld is now much more detailed, with trees and towns more clearly visible. While the overworld no longer has the Earth-like curvature to it, the player can now rotate the camera as well as move in all directions. Tales of Eternia would be the first game to introduce the now iconic 2 worlds mechanic, in which there are now 2 world maps to explore. Okay, technically there was the Aether Sphere in Tales of Destiny, and I guess the different time periods in Tales of Fantasia kind of count as different worlds, but regardless, this would become a trend within the Tales games, with several Tales games being set across 2 or more worlds. Tales of Eternia takes us back to arguably the smallest cast in a Tales game, with only 4 playable characters. This however works in the game's favour, as it ends up being a case of quality over quantity, as the characters really drive the plot compared to the world events like in Destiny and Fantasia. This is driven even more by campsite scenes in which the cast will talk things out with one another, deepening their characters. There are 3 additional guest characters, however they are not as flushed out skills and stat wise and are only playable for short periods of time. These guest characters include Razius Lune, a mysterious travelling merchant who helps the group out in Inferior; Chat, a young female descendant of the famous pirate Ifrid, who ferries the party around the oceans on her ship the Van Eltia; and finally Max, the leader of the Celestian resistance group Shaleska, who joins the party to help overthrow the evil ruler of Celestia. Along with introducing the 2 worlds concept, Eternia would also be the first game in the series to introduce cooking. Okay, yes, Tales of Fantasia on the PS1 actually introduced cooking. Geez, can we give this game credit for anything? Go on as the food-based system, and instead your party can use the food they acquire to cook meals that can heal the party, as well as remove certain status effects. To learn new recipes, the player must first find the mysterious Wonder Chef, who disguises himself as random objects around town for the player to find. Tales of Eternia seems to have taken a few cues from its fellow PS1 Final Fantasy games, adding several poorly aged CGI cutscenes along with minigames. And I mean a lot of minigames, with 12 different side activities the party can find themselves doing when not trying to stop the Grand Fall. These range from vehicle games to card games to cooking games and can very much end up being overwhelming. I didn't particularly find myself getting super invested into any specific minigame over another. Getting back to the main story however, we once again find ourselves looking for the Great Spirits to help save the world. Here the Great Spirits are called the Great Kramels, but take on the same role that the Great Spirits did in Fantasia. As the two casters, Meredy and Keel can capture the Greater Kramels inside their Kramel cages. From here, the Greater Kramels can give the two access to elemental spells which become more powerful as the Greater Kramels get stronger. The types of spells also depended on whose cage the Kramels are in, thus the game incentivizes switching the Kramels between Meredy and Keel's cages to unlock the most powerful spells in the game. While Tales of Eternia introduces several mechanics that would go on to be series staples, one thing that would thankfully only be attempted here is the game's unique saving system. When in dungeons, the party can save off the menu like in the overworld, instead of save points like in most other Tales games. Instead of save points, dungeons now have load points where the party will respawn upon getting a game over in a dungeon. The convenience factor of these load points ends up being kinda useless, as you still need to save to make use of them, thus rendering them no better than normal save points. However, certain load points do heal the party, which is something save points would start doing in the later Tales games. Tales of Eternia advances the battle system even further with the Aggressive Linear Motion Battle System, or ALMBS. Battles are now much faster, and thanks to the game's improved performance, spells no longer pause the battle, allowing you to run out of the way of powerful magic attacks. However, the biggest addition to this new battle system is the character's ability to perform multiple combo attacks, compared to the single hits characters could perform in the previous two games. Characters can now perform 2 regular attacks, along with an additional 3rd attack in certain cases. Characters can then follow up these attacks with a skill, no longer called specials, which then, under certain circumstances, can be followed up by another skill. The comboing system in this game can be quite complicated, and even after 20 plus hours of playing this game, I was never quite able to reliably perform any substantial comboing outside of a basic 3-hit attack followed by a single skill. However, the difficulty in performing these combos actually works in the game's favour, as battles now become a test of skill as opposed to just a test of stats like in the previous 2 games. This has gone on to be one of the best parts of the Tales series, in which the player will become stronger not just from equipment and levelling up, but also a comprehensive understanding of the controls and battle system. The use of skill by the player can be pushed even further with the use of manual control, which now works much more fluidly than it did in Destiny. While not available right from the start, manual control can be obtained very early on as a key item, which means you no longer need to equip any technical ring, thus allowing you to equip more practical accessories. Technical rings aren't the only impractical item to go. Channeling rings are now gone too, allowing up to 3 other players to be able to play straight from the get-go. Not only that, player 1 is no longer locked to playing as the main swordsman, with all other party members now available to play. As a result, the other party members are now much more versatile fighters with their own sets of arts and playstyle. While Reed remains the easiest to control due to his quick swordplay, the other characters are still fun to play as. Farah is arguably the second easiest character to play as, and takes on a monk-like role using her feet and fists to pull the enemy into the ground, as well as cast several healing spells to keep the party in top shape. For his short stint as a playable character, Raz offers us a handful of sword attacks and skills. Meanwhile, Chad uses her bag as a weapon, and is the thief of the group, and finally, Max uses his oversized cannon to blast the enemy into pieces. Going over to the casters, both Keel and Meredy will primarily rely on casting spells to attack the enemy. The spells they can cast will depend on which Kramel they have in their own and the others' cages. By using enough of one element's spell, the caster holding that element's greater Kramel can call them in for a powerful screen-wide attack, which can certainly help in some tough fights. Despite relying on casting, the two can conduct close range attacks, with Keel using his staff and Meredy using Quickie to attack. Guess it really is a Pokemon. This actually makes Meredy somewhat viable as a caster to play, since Quickie can keep enemies at bay while you cast. This is interesting as spellcasters tend to be poor to play due to their long casting times, which can be quite a bore, and the series wouldn't really fix this until Tales of Graces in 2009. While I have enjoyed Tales of Eternia's battle system, in reality I've only grazed the surface as the battle system is full of special Easter eggs for those who master it, from team skills to the powerful divine skills, which is one of the earliest forms of the series' iconic mystic arts. Tales of Eternia is a huge step up for the series' battle system, and it would lay the groundwork for future Tales games to come. Motoi Sakuruba and Shinji Tamura are once again back for their third Tales score, and much like with the previous games, they once again deliver a solid score. While the game in my opinion lacks any standout pieces like Fighting the Spirits and Leon and Irony of Fate, it does deliver some pretty good themes across the board, and arguably sets the template for the next decade of Tales games. However, arguably where Tales music is at its best is in the battle systems, and here Eternia is pretty good. Tales of Eternia is the first game in the series to introduce multiple regular battle themes throughout the game, with both Inferior and Celestia having their own battle themes. Along with this, we get some pretty solid boss themes, even if none of them are super standout. While the soundtrack is solid for the most part, I do take issue with a few songs of being a little harsh in the ear, like the Frozen Town of Perut's theme, and the theme played while diving. I also have issues with the overuse of the song Relaxation in literally every campfire scene. However, I can mostly overlook these poor musical choices for what I would say is a pretty solid soundtrack. When it comes to the game's opening theme, J-pop band Garnet Crow would be brought on to perform the song Flying, which, while not as good as Dean's Yume Daora Uni, is still a solid upbeat song, which I can find myself singing along with. When it comes to the opening cinematic, Production IG again does a good job, and I might say an even better job than what they did with Destiny's opening cinematic. However, I do take issue with the extremely delayed start to the music, leading to this frequently happening when I watch the OP. Okay, time to watch Tales of Eternia's opening, and why aren't we getting any sound? Is my volume off? Okay, volume, is it volume up? Hello? Hello?
Oh jeez, ow, 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 ow.
There's a reason why most Tales fans will recommend Tales of Eternia as the best Tales game to play for those looking at the series' origin, because Tales of Eternia is the complete package when it comes to a Tales game. The game has all the series staples, from a lovable cast to a battle system which is as much a test of skill as it is a test of stats. Tales of Eternia would also bring forward other norms such as the cooking system, which would be present in most future entries. While the gameplay is where Tales of Eternia dominates, I don't want to understate its story and characters. While some might prefer the casts of Tales of Destiny, due to their more complex backstories and out there personalities, I by no means think the Eternia cast is weak. Arguably, the more grounded backstories makes the cast more relatable. Also, let's face it, despite its larger cast size, over half of Destiny's characters have become practically irrelevant in the second half of the game, and some like Chelsea and Kang really didn't add much to the plot at all. I cannot understate Tales of Eternia's importance on the Tales franchise, not only for its impact on future mainline games, but also for the wider franchise. Tales of Eternia would go on to spawn its own, be it short-lived, MMORPG, as well as be the first Tales game to get a full-on anime adaptation. And yes, this was the first, as Fantasia's OVA wouldn't come out for another 3 years. The Eternia anime would choose to follow a side plot rather than the main game, and much like the Xenosaga anime was actually my first experience with the game. With Tales of Eternia practically perfecting the 2D Tales formula, it seemed the only step forward for the series was the third dimension, and the developers would agree, and would begin working on an ambitious new entry to bring the series into 3D, which I will talk about soon. But first we need to talk about the actual Tales of Destiny 2.